Okay, so anyone have anything they'd like to share, comment on, or ask any questions?
Yes, if no one else does, I think I shared recently, but I would love to share.
Okay, very good.
So I had a really good experience this morning, getting to kind of continue on the lines of exploring movement and feeling crazy while doing the Gold series. And especially with the eyes, with the eyes and the yoga portion, I found that my eyes like to dart around a lot, and that makes the movement go a lot further. So that was one, but I guess the thing that really stood out to me was just how, as my system is releasing and I'm feeling all these urges underneath, I think my experience, it made me realize how much I look for control and stability by being still, whether it's looking for stability externally, like in circumstances, or kind of like looking for either or solutions. I don't know how, this is kind of weird how it all tied together, but I could feel that I'm afraid of that crazy feeling, which is what all my urges feel like, where they do a million different things. And so that was kind of really cool to unravel and see, like, both that I'm afraid it's going to stay crazy and chaotic, and that's something that will prevent me from relating to people normally because I'm crazy. And also that, like, if you let it play out, eventually there's an order that forms. There's some sort of summary of action that you want to take. And so I was kind of letting myself feel all these and writing a few things down that came to me during it. And I guess what I kind of wanted to know is, does it feel that crazy for you? Or are you so used to it that it doesn't feel crazy anymore? Or is this like what it seems like this is what it should feel like in a way, if you let yourself be. But it feels like it feels close to being either off form or disrespectful. Like, not really tai chi, because it's so frenetic. At least it was for me today. So that's kind of my sharing of my question. And being remote, I think, allows a little more exploration for that, because you're not like being totally crazy in a class full of people. But I'm still like, is this okay? So that's my question.
That's a great question. Actually, probably we're practicing Tai Chi in a more authentic way because of COVID and because it being a remote class. And actually, I would say it's done traditionally, because see, when you're in the same space with a group of people, the level of how crazy you can let yourself be is a bit limited, because it can be distracting for the people, right? And so that's one of the reasons why, the sayings say that, really actually your real learning happens outside of class. And the reason is because class is supposed to be there kind of just to kind of calibrate to people who are ahead of you, to see kind of what it feels like when you follow that and you're kind of in sync with that, because of our mirror neurons, we can kind of relate what it feels like in other people's systems. But then, you're supposed to kind of let yourself go crazy when you're just practicing by yourself. And so that you need the balance between yin and yang, right? But now that we have this class remote, we actually kind of have the benefit almost of being able to do both. And so, but to answer your question, is it okay? for it to be, to feel that crazy or to feel that insane, to feel that frenetic energy? The answer is actually yes. And not only is it okay, but it's the only way there. So when you actually look at someone who is more accomplished, who actually has more stillness, it's because they've actually allowed themselves to have that instinctual crazy energy
Like play
flow.
out.
Play out. They've allowed it to play out.
Yeah.
So it actually, it reaches a genuine still point. But you can't reach a genuine still
Mm-hmm.
point until the craziness has itself worked out or released, if you will. And most people are trying to get to the end point without going through the process of getting to the end point, which is kind of actually, I want to say, problematic. And actually, there's actually, something that's called polyvagal theory, and that was theorized by Stephen Porges. And he actually talks about this, which was really interesting, because when I was actually listening to one of his talks, there was this part that talked about where human beings reach stillness. Stillness is like when your body is still. It actually has two different aspects. Like when you have to be still, you kind of, it's the unsafest thing. It's something that you do when you're feeling extremely unsafe and you're feeling extremely under duress, such as like when you're playing dead because you're being hunted by a predator. And so it's super unsafe and you're frozen. And so there's that state. And then but then if you think about all other circumstances, you actually are relaxed and you have this feeling that you can do whatever you want to do and you can move wherever you want to move. And so he was basically saying that, essentially, basically frozen or being still is a sign of fear, kind of actually the worst kind of fear. And I don't know whether he talked about this, but I know that, so that's actually definitely true. And so Tai Chi talks about that state, but it also talks about that the other time that you're feeling really still is when you feel extremely safe, where you just relax and you're resting because you don't have to move. And so we're trying to reach the other stillness, but if we're trying to reach the other stillness without working out that, as you said, the frenetic energy, that instinctual energy, then it feels crazy making.
Yes. Torture.
Yeah, it's torture. And so, it's kind of like, ironically, there's a saying, like, basically, there's this concept that everyone is insane and we're just basically hiding it. There's no such thing as sanity. And this is actually what they're talking about. It's basically the primal energy that actually has no place in society because it's disruptive to other people. And, we all have some version of that energy. And and that's actually where, like, let's say for instance in family environments where you're in such close proximity, you can't escape each other. And so that's one of the reasons why, like the closer the relationship gets, oftentimes, in some ways, the nastier things happen between family members. And part of the reason is because of this energy not having an area for it to be worked out, and for it not to be safe. And if you kind of actually look at when the relationship becomes safe, people start being able to talk about these things safely and actually find avenues for them within the relationship. And then the relationship starts becoming really healthy. And so, nowadays we call that being authentic. And then, overcoming shame. And then we talk about that being securely attached, where essentially you're not going to be driven out and be abandoned for your quirks and your weirdness. and your instinctual energies. And so it's kind of like the difficulty of, it's an end both like where it's true that in general, probably out in public, you know, it might be disruptive for the people, but then at the same time, there's nothing wrong with you just because you have, you know, that instinctual quirk, if you will. And so it's kind of like something that a human being is tasked to work out in their lifetime, you know, well, partially because you don't have a choice about it. But anyways, so I feel like, you know, you just kind of like you described your experience really well in view of that. And so the answer is, yeah, actually, you don't really have a choice about it. And, you know, like when I have my own practices and I do that, and I'm not leading a class, you know, sometimes you'll see me do weird things even during class, but when it's just my own practice, you know, I'll vary it even more, actually. And it really changes because what your system wants to do is very different. And then it gets more and more still until you actually just want to be still, because that's what feels best.
Yeah, that's really helpful picture. I mean, I feel like it was kind of giving me hope in a way, you know, there's some pockets of hopelessness in my life where I feel like I haven't really let myself play or let myself be instinctual, and it was really helping point those out. And kind of amazing how the practices keep revealing these areas.
Yeah.
And allow you to kind of like work with whatever energies are flowing through at the moment, because it's always different. Day to day, it's always different. So I really appreciate I appreciate the stability that allows for the instability, the exploration of instability. Because I think without that, it really would feel kind of too diversified or too vast. So at least in my case, the structure works really, really well.
Yeah. No, it's that you, I feel like you named it well. You're structuring the unstructured part of ourselves. You know, it's kind of like you're creating safety. You're kind of creating a fence so that within the fence you can play.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like, you know, that's what martial arts is. You know, martial arts, you know, it's like, it's just, people have the urge, some people, not everyone, but a lot of people have the urge to actually explore the primal, you know, violent survival aspect, you know, of struggle within ourselves. And so, you know, it's kind of like martial arts is where you structured it and made that exploration safe for people to explore. And so it's like it makes it safe to explore. And that's why it makes a person so healthy. And it's kind of like, you know, if you look at people who are martial artists, they're not violent. Actually, they're very honorable because they've given themselves an area where they can actually channel their passion. Or there's that instinctual energy. And everyone works different, you know. The people who are crazy about running, you know, you kind of see how the survival system works, and everyone has something instinctual. And so finding that instinctual play where you give that space and room to explore and expand, you know, it's really just critical, whatever that area is. And so what you said about that expansion and the exploration, I feel like it's really spot on. Without it, it can really feel unsafe to explore, you know, that primal aspect of us, because our primal feelings, you know, like they've gone under, because as I said, socially, they can be very disruptive to other people. So I remember when I first started, the meditative things, I just could not sit down. Sitting down was like I had so much energy, and also unbalanced like energy in my system. And I had so much emotional congestion actually from having health issues and having ADD and not getting along, and then trying to be still and focus when I just had trouble focusing, and like trying to force myself to do things that instinctually just, I couldn't do. And so when I first started, Tai Chi for me was a godsend, because, it had all these movement exercises that allowed me to channel my energy and release all the congestions before even I had to sit down. And so I couldn't start my sitting practice or my meditation practices until years later, until I released enough of the energy that was congested in my system. And until, that insanity was released. And then once you accept that insane part of you, the shame you're feeling about it dissipates. And because of that, you can actually be with it, and you actually start finding some real acceptance with it, which I feel like is just like godsend. Anyways. So
Thanks so much for sharing that. That's kind of it's kind of what I was feeling. There's some fear of just that part of my brain that's unbalanced, or if it, I don't know if it's unbalanced, but the thought was kind of like, well, all these things that I felt were crazy, I suddenly could see them in a different light. I was like, well, maybe that's actually not crazy. Maybe there's something to that urge, and I just been dismissing it, and the kind of black and white thinking that comes out of that. So
yeah, well said. I think that when we have fears about our instincts, and it's been rejected in the past in a painful way, and it's not been safe for us to, I tell this to people all the time, but when I was younger, I was active, I was very distractible, and I was very visual. So I'd go into other people's homes, and and I love food. So the first thing I do is I go to the fridge, and it was like unconscious. I would be there opening it without even knowing I was opening it. And I got, understandably, which is not an acceptable behavior, to go into other people's homes and open their fridge. Understandably, I got a lot of flack for it. And I learned how to correct that behavior. But, there's a lot of shame that comes with it. And so, it's, I think, understandable that we fall into black and white thinking. And so I think these practices allow us to go back and take care of some of the behaviors that got corrected. And
well, and what's crazy is, even like I was saying, that having those urges, but not even knowing you're having those urges, and that's what you're reacting to.
It's
like the urges themselves get, I think, what my experience was, they get hidden under the stillness that's trying to look a certain way.
Yes.
And it's like, I didn't even know I had these urges, and then there's all this crazy energy. It's like, oh.
Yes. And that's traditionally what they call illusion and self-deception. And and some what people think is, you're not actively lying to yourself. You basically had to survive, and you learn how to push certain things down. And and you could see for yourself that it wasn't actually working for the people. You learn how to be considerate, and you don't realize that the consideration is coming at a cost to your own instinctual self. And so until you become an adult where you can create this kind of space for yourself, you don't even have the opportunity to really go and explore it. So to me, this is kind of like a natural process of, you know, human development. That's kind of almost, I want to say, inevitable. But yeah, I want to say that what you said is actually spot on. I think that's one of the reasons why we don't even know we have these, and we don't even find these out until we start unlocking some of the deeper congestions within us. So, okay, very good. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. That was
Thank you for
really,
listening. Thank you for your your teachings on it.
oh, you're welcome. Very good. Okay, now I'm almost done cleaning here. So anyone have anything else they'd like to share in closing here? Or ask any questions? Probably have to be quick.
I had a quick thing I could share. I had an experience a few years ago after dancing really hard for a really long time where I felt like a thing among things. And I've been playing with something you were saying in the Q&A last week about if you're feeling charged with someone, kind of popping out and seeing like who is it, you know, that's like that's observing the situation. And I it sort of clicked, oh right, that experience that I had after dancing, I got so emptied out that I was in a non-dual state, but I thought it was something that I had to kind of get to, like I had to be that emptied out to be able to access that. And I realized this morning I was feeling caught up, and just using that, pointing out instruction from the Q&A last week, and then using that experience as a touchstone. It's like I already know what that feels like. I have a felt sense of it, so I can just access that, you know, and amplify
Nice.
that. And I could feel it like calming my brain down immediately. So yeah, wanted to thank you for the instructions last week. It really helped bring some things together for me today.
Yeah. You know, the experience that you had is called, so, you know, it's called entering, maintaining, and not falling out. Oh, and so you basically got to the maintaining. So you learn how to enter, and then you found a way to maintain it. And it's actually typically happens like that. You have some conscious ways of entering into it, and then you actually have an experience space, and then these connect, and then you realize you don't actually have to do something. And the experience that you enter in, now that you said it, is actually the same experience as what I always talk about, which is basically you're learning how to go back to a state of being a baby that's crying, that's being held by a loving mother, you know, just soothing you so that you don't feel like you're going through it alone. And so the whole experience of the non-dual state is actually, you know, if you think about non-dual state, it just basically means non-judgment. It's a state where you're not being judged. And, you know, it's basically the state of a mother holding a baby and pouring love into it. And that's the experience of that's what the experience of a non-dual state should be. It's one of the reasons why you can see many perspectives, because it's an open experience. So I want to say really well done and great sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Master Kim. That's really helpful context.
Okay, very good. Okay, I need to scooch here. We'll have a really just great rest of the day, great cultivation, and just have fun exploring with your frenetic energy, or your insanity, if you want to call it, or your craziness within the bosom of your mother, that divine energy. So, okay.
Thank you so much, Master Kim.
Thank you, Master
welcome.
Kim.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Bye.